9 years ago, Israel pulled out of Gaza and gave it to the Palestinians. No negotiations, no quid pro quo. They got nothing in return. It was a unilateral action intended to jumpstart the peace process. In 2005, when the withdrawal was being debated in Israel, Knesset member Ayub Kara, an Arab, told WorldNet Daily, the withdrawal is going to be terrible for Israeli security. Hamas is going to become dominant as soon as Israel leaves Gaza, and they will use the land to stage more attacks against Israel. Hamas is already telling their supporters that Israel leaving Gaza is because of their terrorism. So they're thinking terrorism works. He was right on all points. Rocket fire from Gaza into Israel began even before the handover was completed. The Palestinian Authority blamed Hamas for the missiles. Every Jew left Gaza. They left behind millions of dollars worth of infrastructure and profitable business ready to be the foundation of a vibrant economy. For instance, they left more than 500 acres of greenhouses. American Jewish donors purchased the greenhouses from evicted settlers in order to give them to the Palestinians. NBC News said at the time, the greenhouses are a centerpiece of Palestinian plans for rebuilding Gaza. But it was goodwill to no avail. As soon as the pullout happened, Palestinian mobs began looting, burning, and otherwise vandalizing the very greenhouses that were meant for them to prosper. These greenhouses had previously given employment to thousands of their fellow Palestinians. What happened with the greenhouses happened throughout Gaza. Riots broke out everywhere. Chaos reigned. Israel wanted, even needed, the Palestinians of Gaza to succeed and prosper. They needed a secure and stable neighbor. When they pulled out of Gaza, Israel gave the Palestinians every advantage. The nations of the world poured in money, billions of dollars. But just weeks after Israel's withdrawal, the people of Gaza elected an internationally recognized terrorist group, Hamas, to govern them. And as Ayub Kara predicted, the Palestinians saw Israel's act of goodwill as capitulation to the years of terrorism that preceded it. His view was proven by a memo written by Hamas leader Mahmoud al-Zahar. The withdrawal, if it is implemented, is an important achievement by the Palestinian people. Its intifada, an armed struggle, its determination and great sacrifice, and confirms the willingness, correctness, and usefulness of employing an armed struggle and its ability to attain political objectives. In other words, to the Palestinians, the Gaza giveaway meant that their terrorism worked. Critics have called Gaza an open-air prison and compare it to the Jewish ghettos of 1930s Warsaw. But Israel and Egypt shut down their borders with Gaza in order to stop the flow of weapons and terrorists in and out of the territory. Who can blame them? Missiles and suicide bombers cannot be tolerated. Hamas insists that free borders around Gaza are a prerequisite for stopping the rocket attacks. Conversely, Israel makes stopping the rocket attacks and terror tunnels under Israel's borders a prerequisite for opening the border. For much of the world, the positions may seem equally reasonable until you realize that the rocket attacks preceded the closing of Gaza. Travel restrictions to and from Gaza did not cause the unrest. They were the result of it. When Israel unilaterally withdrew from Gaza, they did so with following stipulations. The Gaza Strip shall be demilitarized and shall be devoid of weaponry, and the State of Israel reserves its fundamental right of self-defense, both preventive and reactive, including, where necessary, the use of force in respect of threats emanating from the Gaza Strip. Gaza has not for 1 second in the intervening years been demilitarized or without weapons. Instead of using the hundreds of millions of dollars given by Western supporters to create a thriving industrial city-state, the PLO and Hamas used the money for building a vast attack tunnel system and tens of thousands of rockets to launch against Israel's civilian population. This is why Israel now has to check all borders against terrorist smugglers of weapons. The Palestinians have forced Israel to shut borders that would have been happily open to them had they not used them to arm for annihilating Israel. In a stunning twist of logic, Israel's critics use casualty figures to determine right and wrong in the conflict. Their thinking runs like this: more Palestinians have died, therefore Israel must be the aggressor. How's that for turning logic on its head? It means that to win the propaganda war, Hamas just has to lose the fighting war. Back on July 26th, Robert Fisk, writing for The Independent, said, if 800 Israelis had died and only 35 Palestinians, I think I know our reaction. We would call it, rightly, a slaughter, an atrocity, a crime for which the killers must be made accountable. It's absurd to think that casualty totals can possibly determine moral standing. In essence, he is saying that might makes wrong, that in a war, it doesn't matter whose cause is right, it only matters who has the most casualties. I told you about the terror tunnels last week, but there are a couple of other things we've discovered since then that you need to know. They really are terror tunnels. When the IDF started investigating them, they found bombs placed directly beneath Israeli kindergartens. Also, Hamas appears to have learned from their colleagues in the Taliban how valuable a hostage can be. The Israelis found large numbers of syringes, tranquilizers, and plastic handcuffs in most of the tunnels. They also found IDF uniforms. All of these items were to be used in kidnapping Israeli soldiers and civilians. As you've seen images of destruction from Gaza on television over the last few weeks, you probably noticed that the destruction got worse over time. That's because the Israelis learned just what they were up against in those tunnels. A few years ago, at the insistence of the United Nations, Israel began allowing construction supplies into Gaza in a greater amount, especially concrete. It was supposed to help Gazans build houses, hospitals, and businesses, but most of it was diverted for use in the tunnels. These are not simple dirt tunnels. They're fortified bunkers, and they've been built beneath civilian neighborhoods, some as much as 60 meters under the ground. It takes massive bunker-busting bombs to take out these kind of installations, which would inevitably result in horrific collateral damage and civilian casualties. Obviously, that's part of the Hamas plan to gain world sympathy and destroy Israel with propaganda. That's why the IDF has found it necessary to destroy the tunnels by hand, and dozens of Israeli soldiers have been killed in the process because of this. The 83rd Psalm begins with this prayer: O God, do not remain quiet. Do not be silent, O God, do not be still. For behold, your enemies make an uproar, and those who hate you have exalted themselves. They have made shrewd plans against your people and conspire together against your treasured ones. They have said, come and let us wipe them out as a nation, that the name of Israel be remembered no more. For they have conspired together with one mind against you. They make a covenant. You know, folks, it's a privilege to participate in God's kingdom and his causes. But ultimately, the battle is not yours, but God's. The Lord has himself promised that there will be a growing dangerous demonically inspired hatred of all Christians as the final hours of the age draw to an end. Let all who are believers now keep their ears tuned for the Lord's voice. He is about to suddenly come for us and shout, "Come up here." The next conscious moment, we'll be standing in heaven with him and all our believing loved ones. Good night, my beloved brothers and sisters, and God willing, I'll see you next week.
You've been watching the Hal Lindsey Report. To support this program, send your tax-deductible gift to Hal Lindsey Media Ministries, P.O. Box 470-470, Tulsa, Oklahoma 74147. You can also support this ministry online. Visit hallindsey.com or call 1-888-RAPTURE.